Well, there's a lot going on in the hockey world right now. NHL Free Agency begins officially tomorrow, July 1st. And the St. Louis Blues are in the middle of an important offseason here as they're trying to improve upon their success from 2024-25, make it back to the playoffs again. And they've got some key areas of need, particularly a center. So they'll seek to address those needs via free agency and on the trade market this offseason. So here on the eve of free agency, which UFAs could the Blues potentially target? How might they fit onto the team as it exists today? The trade market is another possibility, with the Blues already appearing in a lot of rumors around the league, particularly with Jordan Kyrou. So could he be on the move before his no trade clause kicks in? We'll talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week. It's John and Alec with you, as always. We're talking all things Blues, and right now that's off-season content. We just did some draft coverage, pre and post draft. So if you want to check out our reaction to Justin Carbonneau, go check out our most recent episode. We're hoping to continue to react to the Carbonneau pick and development camp soon with hopefully a special guest. So stay tuned for that. And then if the Blues make any big moves, free agency or trades or offer sheets or anything like that, we're going to be on here to talk about it, to react to it, to talk about what it means for the Blues and for their upcoming season. And we'll also do some speculation at times. If there are rumors flying around, we'll talk about those. So we got a full slate today, so we can go ahead and get into it. And I want to start the conversation, Alec, with Radek Faksa, who, obviously was on the Blues, was on their identity fourth line. He was the center for that line, and is currently slated to become a UFA as of July 1st. So it seems like the Blues are open to bringing him back, but again, with a fourth line center, it's not like, I doubt it's something that they're like really stressing over about bringing Faksa back, especially with Oscar Sundqvist there as well, who can play fourth line center minutes. But what are your thoughts on what you've heard about Faksa potentially returning? Do you bring him back if you're the Blues? If so, like, what do you think is a fair deal for his services?
Yeah, Faxa is a guy who just his role is just not quite as valuable. We've seen teams pay for bottom six players kind of a lot recently, and honestly, it's kind of never really worked out in their favor.
Hmm.
And I think that's Doug Armstrong being one of the better GMs in the league is not giving Trent Frederick, was it like 8 years or something? Just a ridiculous deal. There's other examples around the league too, but anyways,
Yeah.
on the Blues, I think it's that Fax is a guy that they like. Faxa liked playing for St. Louis. He openly expressed so. And if there is an opportunity to bring him back that's mutually beneficial, great. But it makes sense for Fox and his camp to test the open market, and it makes sense for the Blues to let him do so that they could see if someone's going to offer him $5 million, that maybe just isn't realistic for what this team is trying to spend and where they're at in their organizational timeline. So I think it's just it makes sense for both parties, and it would be great to have him back. But if some other organization who has a little bit more money to spend wants to overpay to get this guy in their team, power to them. The Blues aren't going to break the bank to bring in Radek Faksa or any player, really. They're going to do what's responsible and what's the long-term play for this team, which is a really wise way of going about roster building when there's a lot of risk involved with free agents in general.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the pitch is, this line was so fun. It worked out so well for you. Like, there were good results. You're an integral part of this team. Like, I think you're sort of pitching. You're making a case of like comfort, familiarity, but also like, this was working for like a full season. Don't you want to stay and figure it out? But yeah, I agree. I don't think it's something where the Blues are going to get in a bidding war over facts or anything like that. I think if they can bring him back around what he was paid this past season or less, then that's great. But it's what was he paid this year? Like just over 3 million. I
3.25.
Yeah, so like that's sort of in the area of contracts where it's like, okay, the Blues offer 2 million. If another team offers like 2.5 or three, like that's not a big difference. But if like the Blues aren't willing to do that, it's probably a big difference to Faxa, right? Who like probably take $1 million to move somewhere else and try it with a new team. Like um, I don't think there's for Faxa like any sense of loyalty if the Blues aren't willing to budge or pay an extra 500K or extra million or anything like that. Not saying that I think they necessarily should try to break the bank to keep Faxa around, but yeah, like I could see it going either way, really. I hope he's back. I think it makes a lot of sense to try and bring him back. I prefer Faxa over Sundqvist um, in the fourth line slot, but really, I mean, either will be fine. We're talking the fourth line here, right? Um, but yeah, like Jacob said in the chat, the free agent market is getting really thin, especially for centers, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot to go on
I
in
mean,
the free agent market
everybody
right
is
now.
extending right now.
Yeah,
Like the whole NHL.
yeah. So I could see a figure coming in for Faxa who that's maybe a little bit surprising. I'm not saying like something crazy, but more than he's worth. I mean, like Cap Wages projects that he'll sign a 2 year $1.3 million contract. I don't think it'll be that low, especially in this market. I think it'll be closer to what he's being paid now. And I think if it is, and he's willing to sign that deal, the Blues should do it. Um, but yeah, I think that's sort of one of the first orders of business. Let's talk about some of the other free agents that are on the market because look, the Blues need a they need a center, right? They need a second line center. Um, there were some interesting comments from Doug Armstrong um, over the weekend, I believe it was. He was sort of talking about like we're one of what did he say? Like 27 teams looking for a center, right? Or looking
Hmm.
for a second line center, and it's going to be difficult to find one like that is a legit second line center option. It'll be difficult to be at like the front of the line to acquire that player. But he also said like he commented on how well the second line was working out with Shin at center, right? And so I think he's willing to either run it back, just signing Faxa, um, or maybe signing like a lower tier center to play third or fourth line center and let Shin continue on the second line. So I mean, I trust Army to like test all those options, right, and see what's out there and what's not feasible. But um, where I want to start the conversation is with a name that we've been seeing a lot in the past little bit here, and that's Mikko Granlund, who's a center coming off of his 33-year-old season. He just finished up a 4 year, 5 million, four by $5 million contract. He was with San Jose at the start of the season, got traded to Dallas mid-season, so he played the rare 83 game season this year, and in that year he scored 22 goals, 44 assists, 66 points. Um, there are some questions about like whether he is capable as a center, especially like a second line center. Um, but it seems like the Blues are preparing to make him an offer, right? There's a report today, or I guess a tweet from Cam Robinson over at Elite Prospects, who was talking about uh, sort of say there'll be a healthy market for him. He's expected to hit the open market, um, and St. Louis is expected to be preparing on offer. San Jose and Carolina are as well. So it could be tough to like outbid a team like Carolina, who's got uh, a Finnish player in Sebastian Aho, and they've got plenty of cap space, and they're a little bit more competitive right now than the Blues are. But um, what are your thoughts on Granlund? Like we also saw Andy Strickland linking Granlund to the Blues. He thinks Granlund is high on the Blues list of targets. Like, do you think there's anything to this? What are your thoughts on Granlund as a second line center option for the Blues next season?
Granlund is a guy who is not really going to contribute much defensively at all, but he does so sort of to beget his offense. Like, definitely his approach does allow for a lot more just activity and action on the offensive side of the puck.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really good in that mark. This last season he had, let's see, it was 66 points in 83 games. The season before, 60 points in 69 games.
With the
Before
Sharks.
that, yeah, with the Sharks, true,
Yeah.
going almost point per game, and that
Before they
wasn't
got
even.
Macklin Celebrini. Yeah.
And after they lost Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
So there is real offensive ability with Granlund that probably Shen, what his ceiling is. I would say his floor is much higher, which also talking about floor and ceiling, comes with a pretty big caveat here that this is a 33-year-old hockey player.
Yeah.
There isn't development left. It's just how hard does regression hit at this point. So
Yeah.
you know what you're getting. You'd like to think you know what you're getting offensively and defensively with him, which is a really good offensive threat on the second line that plays pretty heavy, a pretty heavy style of hockey, I'd say. Versus like someone like a Shen also plays a very heavy style of hockey, and they honestly do have some similarities as players, but
Mm-hmm.
I think Granlund, yeah, just has more upside in terms of Braden Shen. However, I do find myself, and I struggle to say this because it does seem sort of imminent that the Blues will be heavily pursuing Granlund tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
if he gets signed tomorrow, I would put it at least a 50% outcome
Yeah.
that Mikhail Granlund is a St. Louis Blue. And so
It's crazy.
I am,
How did we get here?
yeah, I just am not as much a Granlund guy. And so I'm trying to be positive about this, considering that I think he's about to play for my team. But it's mostly just the timing of signing Granlund when he's sort of primed for regression. Just given his age, like he's starting to hit that plateau where skaters can really just uh, fall off a cliff, and
Yeah.
um, he played with a really good Dallas Stars team. The hope you would have is that he played with a really bad um, San Jose Sharks team and still looked
Mm-hmm.
pretty good, but that was also 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of how much does regression hit this guy. His style as more of a power player would attribute to, you would think, aging a little bit more gracefully than like a skill player, but you're sort of getting into that timeline where it's starting to get dangerous, and anything like any sort of over 2 year deal for Mikhail Granlund would be a really bad move, to be honest. I would have a hard time spinning that one. Um, yeah, maybe Colin in the chat, maybe 3 years, but even then, you're starting to block Dvorsky, and it'll be hard to trade him when he's 37 versus when he's 34.
Yeah.
And so I am lower on Granlund. I hate to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it makes sense with the timeline of Holloway, of Neighbors, of Bolduc, of all these guys. Um, but he can be offensively better than Braden Shen. Put Shen on the third line, and then if Granlund can be for next year, if they get him on a 1 year deal, that is amazing. That would truly be incredible because there's really very little downside to a 1 year deal. It's very hard to have that long term mess up your plans because of the nature of 1 year deal. Probably not going to happen. Probably more like 2 or 3 years. 2 years I'd be happy. 3 years, yeah, I don't know. But that does really shore up the center depth because say they sign Foxa, which it seems like they want to and could happen. If you can get Foxa and Granlund, that's Thomas down the spine. You've got Thomas, Granlund, Shen, Foxa, On the wing options, you've got Sonny, you've got Dvorsky. Texier could play a bottom six or fourth line center role. And I think I'm forgetting one. But you've got plenty of options at center that really does shore up your core. It doesn't make it like the best center core in the NHL, but it makes it a good enough playoff center core. And that combined with the strength at wing that we already have, that can be a really good offensive team. So a signing like Granlund wouldn't necessarily excite me, but at the same time, it would make sense and I could see where they're coming from. I could see the thought process. And I think that it has a chance to really have a lot of upside, even if it's riskier.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Looks like contract projections for Granlund are around 2 years, just under 5 million, like 4.9 million, something like that per year. Um, and I think we've seen so far projections be a little bit too low with a couple of the big names. Like I think Provorov, for instance, who just signed an extension. A lot of projections for him were lower than what he ended up signing. So I mean, I could see the Blues maybe having to tack on like an extra year or an extra, X amount of dollars just to sort of like outcompete some of these other teams that are also going to be looking for center depth. And if it's only 1 year, if it's a third year, right, or if it's only, I don't know, like 500,000 or something like that, I think I'd be okay with that right now. The cap is going up, and so if it's money that they add on, I don't think it's going to bite them really, as long as as long as they don't make the mistake of long term and like contract clauses and things like that prevent them from moving on from a player if that day comes. But yeah, I mean, like Granlund's a useful player, right? And like you said, he's not going to elevate them to the best center uh, center core in the league or anything like that. But like he'll be useful for a team that wants to get back to the playoffs and be a little bit more competitive than they were this year. Um, I don't think Doug Armstrong and Alexander Steen are doing a rush job here, trying to, vault the Blues back into Stanley Cup contention and sacrificing like a more extended period of success to do that. So I mean, signing a short term contract for a serviceable center like Granlund, I mean, it makes sense to me. Again, like you, I'm not very high on him, but he's got experience. He's pretty versatile. So I think, you know, I think it would be fine. Is I guess what I think. As long as the term isn't too long, I think it would be fine. Um, and again, this is if they decide to go to the free agent route, right? Maybe there's a trade out there to be had. Marco Rossi is really interesting. Sean in the chat, Barzal seems like a really
Yes.
nice option. So like, if they can do something like that, that's what I would prefer. Sure, depending on the package going back the other way, but like just talking about free agency, which starts tomorrow. If Granlund's the guy, you know, I can live with that. And if it looks like he's not the guy, if they sign him and he starts to play on the second line at the center position and it's not working out, like it worked well enough with Shen that you can just sort of you can move some things around and play him where you need to. He's also good on the wing. If you bring back Faxa as well, you can run back the same centers and then have a solid option on the wing or something like that. I would hope that they would keep him in the center position and not mix things up too much. But like he's versatile enough and experienced enough that you have options. He can play on both special teams. He's decent in the faceoff dot, I believe. So again, too long didn't read. It's fine. It's he would be fine. Um, like just as a last point on Granlund, in terms of term, because it seems like the Blues really are interested in Granlund. So in terms of how long they'd be signing him to, elephant in the room, we've got Dvorsky waiting in the wings to take over a second line center job, hopefully. So Do you think they are thinking something like a 2 year, uh, 2 year contract, 3 year contract, something short? Do you think this is a stopgap to wait for Dvorsky? What do you think they're trying to do? Because I mean, second line center is obviously something that they're trying to do. They've said that. So do you think that that goal is to fill that role until a prospect can take over, or do you think maybe they're thinking something longer term? What are your thoughts on their timeline with the second line center position?
This is definitely would be a stopgap signing for Dvorsky. Dvorsky is someone that they're really high on, as they mentioned in their comments. Just about like, I believe Doug Armstrong made some comment to the effect of like, we would love Dvorsky to be 2C, but he's got to earn that first, and we think he can, but that has to come with the age and experience and earning the position. So for that reason, I would put that. That's why I'm very pretty set on, I think, 2 years. I really think 3 years and you start to hamstring yourself a little bit
Yeah.
with term. Excuse me. So I really, really would not feel great about a 3 year deal because that gets really hard to offload too.
Hmm.
And you still got Braden Shen on the roster at that point.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm really looking at a 1 to 2 year deal, which would be great. A 3 year deal would be maybe palatable, however, but anything longer than three and it's an albatross and already
Yeah.
probably the worst contract on the team. Not that I think that would happen, but to me, this is definitely a stopgap for Dvorsky to develop and show that he's ready for a 2C role.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. Okay, what about some other forward UFA options? Are there any that stand out to you? I mean, like looking at the board itself. Um, let's see. A lot of these names have since left left this board, but Brock Besser, a winger, Nikolai Ehlers, Mangiapane, um, Kuzmenko. Any other forwards that you want to discuss? I mean, there's one that I've got on my wish list that we've talked a little bit about before, but before we talk about him, do you have any other forward UFA targets potentially for the Blues?
I think that's the guy that's worth talking about, so I think we can go there.
Yeah, let's do it. So the next, I guess, next best option for a lot of, I guess, like I think Granlund is sort of like the consensus best center available now. Uh, and I think the next one down, I don't know if it's a consensus, but in my mind, the next tier down is Pius Suter, who's a center who just came off of a his previous contract was 2 years, 1.6 million AAV. He's 29 years old. He was with the Vancouver Canucks, and in last season he scored 25 goals and I believe 21 assists. Yeah, and so 46 points. And he took on at times throughout the season, like when injuries necessitated it, he took on some uh, top six center minutes. Like I think he played on the top line is like when Elias Pettersson was injured, for example, at times. And so he's kind of like I've seen the term Swiss Army knife used for Suter because he can play on the wing as well, and then he's able to play tough minutes and tough matchups. So this is someone who I'm particularly interested in as a middle six center option for the Blues. I think he can handle a second line center role. I think he might be a little bit closer to like a 3C or something like that. I think he's right around where Shin is. Maybe a little better in some respects. Um, I think I might be a little bit higher on this guy than you are. Um, I mean, I don't think he's necessarily like the best offensive weapon or anything like that. I think that's an edge that Granlund has over a guy like Suter. Um, but I think he makes up for that with much better defense than Granlund plays. And like I said, he can handle those tough matchups. And I really like his mind, I guess, like his hockey IQ is something that is really attractive to me for like a middle six center. Um, and he's younger too. He's by about 4 years. He's 29, um, and he's sort of in, I guess, in the prime of his career at this point. So like you're probably paying for his best years, which means you're probably paying a little bit more than maybe he's really worth. Like this past season was the best of his career. I don't think he's like an elite option at center or anything like that, but I do think he is like he could make sense as a middle six center, another stopgap before Dvorsky gets here. You're probably paying a little bit longer term, but about the same AAV as a guy like Granlund. A lot of projections, again, about 4.9 million per year for 4 years. I think is the projection that I've seen for Suter, and that sounds about right for a guy his age. And so I know it's longer term and a similar contract, but I really like Suter, and I think he makes a lot of sense for what the Blues need right now. And I think you can make the case to him that like it's kind of a cliche, but like while some of the other teams are suiting a guy like Granlund, and I mean I expect the Blues to do it too, but um, Suter. I think they can make a case to Suter as like you're a guy that we want, like you're on our board. I guess while people are going after a guy like Ehlers or Besser or someone like that, you can come to him and be like, you're the forward that we have in mind or something like that. So um, yeah, those are my thoughts on Suter. Again, we talked about him before. We don't need to sort of exhaust that point. Um, but I really like him, and I think he would be a great option for the Blues right now. Just really steady, provide some stability down the middle. What do you think about Suter?
Yeah, I think you exactly summed up his strengths. It's defense and stability,
Hmm.
and you could say defensive stability. He really
Yeah.
is one of the better defensive forwards in the league. Like he isn't just a good defender; he's a great defender. Um, that it does come into question whether or not you're asking him to play that 2C role. If they brought in Pia Suter, I'd almost prefer if he was the 3C and just you have Shen. I know we're talking about we need a 2C to upgrade from Shen, but I think you could sort of think about this kind of for those who are familiar, which I would expect is most, if not everyone, like Moneyball it, like
Yeah.
recreate your ideal center line in the aggregate. um, and what I mean by that is like, well, if typically you want your 1, 2, 3, 4 centers to be your point producers in that order, that you want your first line center to be your best point producer, your second line center to be your second best of the center core, I should say, um, versus if say Braden Shen doesn't have the offensive chops that, or we feel doesn't have the offensive chops to stand up quite as much. And then that would make you think that the third line center is really, really poor if the second line center is that low. However, with a guy like Suter, it's more like you've raised the floor of the bottom six with Suter's addition. Therefore, that's what I mean. I don't know if I'm explaining this really well, but sort of thinking of recreating in the aggregate, like um, it's a different kind of strength to have a guy like Suter at 2C or at 3C. And maybe where he slots in is kind of irrelevant because
Mm.
what he's going to do is play good defense and and be a stabilizing force in the center core, which the Blues could use for sure. I think this past year they had a pretty good run with the WTF line for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I would be cautious again just about that term. I just think that the timeline of this team is in this sort of weird transitional stage where they kind of still have a year out from being like cup contenders with unless they make some really big shakeups this offseason, which they could. But I think the expectations should be back to playoffs for sure. Um, but signing a guy right now could come back to bite you, and that's where like a 4 or 5 year deal for Pia Suter, I think, could come back to bite you. We
Mhm.
are seeing, I think, at least for me, we are seeing like contracts with lower AAV than I was expecting, but higher term than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's kind of how the market is balancing out this offseason, which is why maybe like a 4 or 5 year deal for Pia Suter would be even more like, I don't know. But I will say that contract would be a lot more movable in my head than a Mikhail Granlund contract,
Yeah.
just given age and every team at the deadline, every playoff team could use a defense first center. Like that's just a good puzzle piece to have,
Yeah.
which is why maybe the Blues should have it. Um, so for Suter, I feel pretty similarly, just for like different reasons of just like it would be a fine addition. I'm not really crazy about it. I don't think it really fits the timeline. I don't think it really fits what this team is trying to do long term, even if it does fit for this coming season. Um, and they've really been playing more for the long term than the like this year going all in.
Yeah.
So it kind of doesn't really feel like a very bluesy move to sign either of these guys, but
Mm.
they're good hockey players and they would make my favorite hockey team better. So I can't be that upset about it.
Yeah. Really, I do think if they got either of these guys, I'd be like, okay, there's a vision here. It should be better. Maybe not ideal, but it should be better than what we got this season, which was serviceable. Um, and as long as, yeah, like you said, as long as the term isn't too long or the contract isn't too much of an albatross, it's like I think it's something I could get behind.
For this season, it should upgrade what was a 96-point playoff team.
Yeah,
That's
which
pretty good.
pretty good. Um, okay, any other forwards? I mean, a couple others that I have written down here, and this these next three are probably more like bottom six centers. If you can't bring back Faxa, if you can't find a 2C, maybe you can find a better 3C or something like that. But I mean, Jack Roslovic, he's a young guy, 39 points, decent offensively. Adam Gaudette just came off of like his like a career year, I guess, for the 28-year-old, 26 points. Um, you could probably get him for like $1 million. He's kind of like a last resort kind of piece in my mind. And then Nick Bjugstad, coming off a 19-point season, he's like another kind of steady guy filling that fourth line role, third line role. You could probably get him for a couple million, something like that. So those are like a couple, break glass in case of emergency options that I could see on the market. Like if you just can't bring back Faxa and you can't find a 2C and you just need to find someone else on the bottom six along with Sonny, those are a couple other options out there. But again, maybe you have some internal options that are better. Any thoughts on those guys or anyone else before we talk about some defensemen?
Um, Kind of not really. I'll just make a more general point. That just I would be really hesitant about the free agent market. I know it seems like that's the only option, but you can always find something out there via trade. I think that this team is more of a surplus at wing. I would still be going the trade route, essentially,
Yeah.
is what I would say, especially on the forward core. Um, just given the options that are out there this year.
Yeah. And then I've seen, some stuff out there about like Brock Besser and Nikolai Ehlers, some of those wingers at the top of the free agent class. I just don't see the Blues. If they're gonna sign a big free agent, I don't see them paying up for a winger. Like you said, they're pretty deep at wing right now. Um, funny comment from Peter in the chat. There's this young Islanders defenseman named Scott Brunovich. Could be worth taking a look at him. Yeah, for sure. Okay,
I
what about
seem to
some?
remember when he got traded away, people said that we lost a lot of talent and the
Hmm,
Blues have lost another defense trade.
hmm,
How's that going now?
hmm, interesting. Okay, but in addition to Scott Brunovich, what are some other defensemen that they could look at? I mean, this is more sort of like, I guess, I don't know if devil's advocate is the right term. I don't guess it is, but just like we should talk about the defensemen that are available. I don't think the Blues, if they're gonna find a new defenseman for this roster, I don't see them going the free agent route. Like I think they're probably gonna try to find a young player with upside via trade if they were to bring in a new, a new defenseman. Um, but it's worth talking about. And the two options that I have, I mean, I had Provorov as like the top of what I think the Blues could feasibly do. Um,
Bye bye.
so long to that option, yeah. But the other ones that I have written down are Ryan Lindgren, who's 27. He's coming off of a $4.5 million contract. 22 points. He's good. He's physical. You can probably get him for like 4-ish million. And then Nick Perbix, he's 26. He coming off a 19-point season, so a little bit younger, which I like. He's a right shot, pretty solid defensively. Another solid, steady defensive kind of guy. Um, any thoughts on those guys, or like any others that you have in mind, or just generally speaking, Blues free agent defensemen, anything like that?
I think both would be terrific signings, and would definitely help shore up your defensive core. I do kind of, maybe I'm overthinking this, but I do kind of worry about the timing of it. I don't know that I would
Yeah,
expect them to come in day one, because I think that would actually be kind of a bad thing if, these depth defensive additions came in when the defensive roster on paper is already set.
yeah,
So if these players get signed before a Letty and or Falk trade, because Army did come out and say that he is not going to be buying them out. So trade is the only way to go now. If they come out and sign these players before a Letty and Falk trade, the Blues lose a lot of leverage because teams know that this is what they're sticking with, and this is their option is only to trade away a defenseman and probably not the guy you just signed.
yeah,
But both Lindgren and Perbix, I do think are really sort of would be really good additions to the team. I just think that they would be so like, and I mean this in quite literally the most positive way I possibly could. I think they would be so unassuming and forgettable, and that is exactly what I want my defensemen to be. If you're not going to be like Cam Fowler putting up historic playoff performances, and or Quinn Hughes, or like these insane puck movers who are also terrific defenders, like if you're not going to be this like made in a lab perfect defensive prospect, if I don't notice your minutes at all on the ice, that is a major plus, because that means you are not losing and you are doing your job as a defenseman. That's incredible. Like for me personally, a guy like Evan Bouchard is just so not the type of player I would like, even though the highs are so high. And with Bouchard, it's a little different because his highs are
yeah,
like tops of the league.
yeah,
But those high risk, high reward defensemen, I would rather have that risk be in the forward core where you can shelter them more versus defensemen who skate one on one constantly throughout
yeah,
games. And so it's so much more important for them to be the lockdown guys.
hmm,
And so that's why I say that I think both Lindgren and Perbix. Lindgren had a really down year, but
yeah,
that's just so different than his career norms, which is why I'm kind of hopeful that if that he could regress back to the mean, as it were, and be a solid signing again. And I am kind of a Lindgren guy. I would like that a lot. But for both these guys, I think they're both great shouts, and I really like addressing defense more in this market because it really is a lot of like very solid, capable NHL starters who, if you can get capable NHL starters next to the core we already have of Fowler, Parayko, and Broberg, who all have like offensive upside. I would say Fowler and Broberg are a little bit more in the upswing, even though I guess Fowler is getting up there in age now. But um, all of which can be offensive guys. If you can just get like good defenders to back them up, then this team could go from being, what were they, like the 10th best defense last year to like top 5 or more. That can be a
hmm,
real calling card for this team if you've got lockdown defense on the back end and you've got aggressive forechecking effort and still solid defense in the forward group. That's a real recipe for success.
yeah. I think I'm a lot more intrigued and into the idea of Perbix, and I think the reason is um, there is like a little bit more of that defensive reliability, I think, than with a guy like Lindgren. Um, and also just like the handedness factor, right? Like he could be a replacement on the right side if you decide to move off from a Justin Falk or someone like that. Um, and so I think the factoring that in, I think it just makes a lot of sense to do that. But yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Any other names? I know I already asked you that and you said no, but anyone else come to mind?
um, yeah, I mean Provorov was another name that is no longer on the market. We're not really going to be looking at like Brent
Are you
Burns
are
or
you a big Cody Cece guy?
no, I am not a Cody Cece guy.
I really like
Um,
the idea of a
yeah, I
Gavrikov,
think we should talk about Gavrikov. Is what I was going to say.
and we've talked about him before. I really like the idea of just like a lockdown guy, but like he's going to be making more than 7.5 million. He's going to get at least you know he's going to get like really long term, and he's 29 years old. Like this is the time in his career when he would sign a long term contract. Um, I think I'm personally a little more willing to sign a guy like Gavrikov to a big deal than you are. I just think his defensive like metrics and his defensive capability is like pretty much like around elite status, maybe not quite elite, but like he's really good. And I don't know. I don't think the Blues will. I think he's staying with the Kings. Um, I would be interested in him, but not too hopeful on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the term with Gavrikov is just looking like it's going to be immense, which um, is not really something I would be comfortable paying him. Um, and so, yeah, like you said, I like the idea of Gavrikov. I think in practice, he's going to be a guy who, just based off positional scarcity, will incur a bidding war, and I
Yeah,
just don't think that's the approach this team should be taking.
yeah. And with Ekblad and Provorov going off the market, he's like the clear number one defenseman guy. So yeah, it'll be expensive to get a guy like Gavrikov. Well, cool. That's free agent talk. Let's talk about some trade rumors. There's one particular Blues winger who has popped up in a lot of trade rumors as of late, especially like leading up to the draft and things like that. That I think we should discuss. Before we do, if you're uh, new to Note News, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that button if you haven't already. We just hit 400. Thanks to everyone for helping us out. Let's get to 500. That would be like a huge milestone for us. So we really appreciate any support that comes in that way. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen, and then follow us on socials. We're over on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. You can come interact with us whenever you want. Okay, trade rumors, trade market. Elephant in the room. There's been a lot of rumors about Jordan Kyrou out there, and the Blues. I don't know if they're like necessarily shopping him around, but I think they're trying to get a good idea of what the market is on a guy like Kyrou. Obviously, his no trade clause goes into effect tomorrow, so like it really in like the final the 11th hour here for a guy like Kyrou. If they are going to trade him,
That'd be a blockbuster deal at this point.
it would, and I think we should be clear that you and I both don't want them to trade Kyrou. Trading a guy who's like entering his prime, who's consistently scoring at least 30 goals, and how many points did he have this year? Like 70 something. A 30 goal, 70-point guy. That's so valuable, and you've got him on what's going to look like a discount for like what you're getting at his prime and where the league is at with the contracts that players of his caliber are signing. It's gonna look like a discount for a long time. So I think that's like a disclaimer. We like Kyrou. We are team. Don't trade Kyrou. Um, but but there are a lot of rumors. I think it's interesting, and we should just talk about you know from a news standpoint what these mean and what could be there. And so just to sort of provide a little bit more context, like Noah Dobson of the New York Islanders, formerly of the New York Islanders, was they were shopping him quite a bit. The Blues were rumored to be really, one of the teams in on that. He ended up going to Montreal, but Kyrou was like the name from the Blues that would have been going the other way, I think. Now, interestingly enough, Montreal in particular has continued to show interest. There have been reports of Montreal being really interested in Kyrou. And I should also say, if there are any hockey fans out there, I'm sure most have heard of Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. He's like one of the the insider to know in the hockey world, but he has said a couple times he's really intrigued by the idea of a trade with Seattle. The Blues want a center, and so trading a guy with the offensive upside of Kyrou to a team like Seattle, getting a good center in return. He sees a match there, not necessarily saying that he had heard anything about those two teams in discussion or anything like that, but he just thought the match was interesting, and I agree. There are some interesting names over there. But why don't we start
sure.
with the Canadians? They are interested in him, as I said, and so is there anyone like on the Habs that you'd be interested in return for Kyrou? I mean, is it just Nick Suzuki or Lane Hudson or something like that?
Yeah, it's like they're untouchables. The Habs roster
Yeah.
just doesn't really interest me at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, trade for
Yeah, Dobson.
funny.
No, Dobson. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, like, if it's not like, and it's not fair to say, like, I don't think, and that's why I think nothing's gonna happen. But like, if it's not Suzuki or Caulfield or Hudson or someone like that, like, I'm really not all that interested in it. And like, even Caulfield, I'm not interested in. I don't think so.
He's a 50-goal scorer. I'm
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
I'm, I'm
okay.
interested.
Yeah. Maybe so, but like if it's not one of their top guys, like if he's not in the package, I'm not really that interested in it. I guess I should say, like if it's someone, an older player that they're just trying to dump, like, get that out of here. I don't want any part in that. Um,
Mhm.
so okay, so we'll continue to monitor over the next hours. Now, I'm thrilled for when this is no longer a conversation. But on the other point, the Seattle Kraken, like I do think this is an interesting one to talk about because yeah, they do
Mhm.
have a lot of centers. We've talked about a couple of them. Jared McCann is someone that you like a lot, right? Um, Another name that I've seen, I think Thomas Welch was sort of tweeting about it. Shane Wright, 21-year-old center, 79 games, scored 19 goals, 25 assists, so 44 points this season. Really young guy who's already starting to find some production at the NHL level. Do you think there's anyone out in Seattle that you would entertain a trade, for Kyrou for?
Yeah, Seattle. I mean, Shane Wright is interesting for sure. I don't know about trading Kyrou for, but I do like Seattle as a team to target. Again, I just think like a trade with Kyrou probably would have had to have come in at this point, and I don't think Kyrou for Shane Wright is really fair. Me personally, I think that's skewed towards like the Seattle would have to give up more, but anyways, um, I think that I
Maybe it's
guess
Matty
just
Beniers or someone like that.
well, I don't think Beniers is getting moved. Shane Wright is kind of the player that makes the most sense to me by a good bit. Former was projected to be a first overall pick, ended up going fourth overall to Seattle, and has kind of looked like relative to expectations an NHL bust. But the dude is still so young. He's I want to say 21. Yeah, 21. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, and hasn't really put a season of tape or really even like to be honest there haven't really even been the highlight moments of tape for him that you would look for, but there's still enough of a prospect pedigree there that I'm excited by the fact that he's in that age range of being 21 years old. Again, I don't think this fixes your 2C problem. Shane Wright would have to play 3C, but he could be 2C by the end of the year if all things go right and he has a Dylan Holloway type advancement. Not necessarily what I'm projecting, but he could be a really cool playmaker to have to add into the mix with some really fun skill too. We'll see at this point. I don't think it's for Kyrou if it happens. I think it's much more likely for like Jake Neighbors or Zach Bolduc or I don't know. I'm trying to spin that they would want Falk, but I just don't think that would happen.
Um,
Or maybe they
yeah,
traded Vince Dunn.
yeah. I think another interesting, part of this discussion is that some of those recent comments from Doug Armstrong. I mean, like he's not. They sort of indicate to me that he's not unwilling to move Kyrie, but that he basically wants a center in return that's of the same caliber. That's a young guy. Um, so like I think the phrase he used was like an apple for an apple. Um, so yeah, like if he can find something like that, I mean, like I'm wondering if Marco Rossi, right? We've talked about him. I see some Mason McTavish in the chat as well.
Yeah, I think the other
That could be
Seattle to
interesting.
me is Anaheim is sneakily a team with a lot of centers too. Now they did
Yeah,
just get rid of Zegras, but
yeah. I mean, like even like Dawson Mercer, I've seen him out there as like a trade trade board guy. Um, any other names like in addition to those that you'd be interested in like a Kyrou, hockey type trade? I mean, like it's a lot of these guys we would be excited to have on the Blues, right? But if Kyrou's going the other way, that changes the conversation. So, what do you think?
mhm. um I so you're asking like other names I like?
Yeah, just like I guess what I'm asking is, are there any other young centers out there? Because I think it almost has to be a center. Are there any other young centers out there that you'd be interested in or willing to trade Kyrou for?
Definitely McTavish is the name that pops to my head when I think of that. The other one would be Marco Rossi, who we've talked about, who you already brought
Yeah,
up. Um, let's see. I don't think Marchenko can play center. Um,
yeah, Clayton Keller would be fun. I doubt he's getting moved though.
no, unfortunately not happening. I mean, if if San Jose wants to move on from one of their young,
Yeah, give me Macklin
uh,
Celebrini.
yeah, no, but like Eklund maybe. Um, I don't know. At this point, I think it's just throwing out names
Yeah.
for the sake of finding. I mean, I guess maybe the name that has entered my mind too is Raquel, who really is more of a winger, but
Hmm.
um, I don't know about for Kyrou though,
Yeah.
just given contract term and everything.
Hmm.
But Raquel is a name that I'm interested, but he's not young, so that's actually not answering your question at all. But I guess I think that again, Doug Armstrong has really identified good process here, and like
Hmm.
it's got to be someone equivalent to Kyrou's level. This probably isn't going to be some blockbuster three team trade or anything. It would be most likely a 1-for-1 or a 1-for-2.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, again, there is now 3 hours before the window closes, so kind of feels like it's not happening.
We'll see, man. I mean that Marchand trade to Florida came at the final minute there. Uh, that stuff can happen. But yeah, really, I think my interpretation of it is good GMs like Army. They do their due diligence. Excuse me, and see what the market would be for a guy like Kyrie. Like this is our last chance to trade him without his approval. What does it look like? You know, I'm sure they identified guys like Noah Dobson out there. Like that's a guy that we want. Let's see, you know, what what the package is if Kyrou would be involved in that package. But before his no trade clause kicks in. So I'm sure those are the kinds of conversations they're having internally. Not trying to shop Kyrou, not trying to move his contract because they think it's a bad one or because they think he's a bad player. Just seeing what's out there, and if it's something that blows them away, maybe pull the trigger, and maybe it becomes a conversation. But I don't think it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I love Jordan Kyrou. He just keeps proving it like again and again that he deserved that money. Um, and people say he hasn't performed in the playoffs. Like he hasn't really been to the playoffs all that much, and he got
He
rocked in the
also led
first
the team in
round.
goals in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
yeah,
Like he was the team leader in goals.
yeah. And then like look at his performance in 2021-22. In 12 games, he scored 7 goals and 2 assists. Like he has had decent playoff performance already. Uh,
I just
yeah,
don't understand how people can come to that conclusion. Like he was number 1 on the team, tied for first, but still
I think
one
like
of 3.
ideally you'd like your sort of sniper skilled winger, team leader in goals to just be the leader and maybe a little bit more flashy. And like I can agree with that. Like would I like I mean, yeah, we would have liked for Kyra to score more goals, obviously, but like
But we lost the series.
I
Like
know, yeah, I know. I'm not beating him up. I'm just saying I think that's what people are thinking when they sort of would criticize him is
I
that
don't
they
understand how you
yeah.
watch hockey and come to that conclusion. He led the team in goals. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully, we wake up tomorrow and Kyrou is still a blue. He belongs in blue. It's a great contract. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That contract is going to look so good. Uh, if he continues to perform at this level, and he might even be better for a couple of years of this contract as well, then I think it's still a discount, especially with where contracts are headed in the league. Um, well, cool. That's our free agency preview. As things start to happen and news starts to break, if the Blues are in on any of it, we'll be back here to react to it. Again, we're hoping to have a special guest on maybe next week to talk about the Justin Carbonneau pick. Oh, this is another reason why I don't want to trade Jordan Kyrou. Did you see Justin Carbonneau's comments today from development camp about Kyrou?
no.
He loves Jordan Kyrou. Like they were asking him
Hmm.
like, who do you look up to in the league? And he was like immediately Jordan Kyrou. And he's like, I know it
That's
seems like I
awesome.
have to say that because I just got drafted by the Blues, but like truthfully, I've loved his game for years.
That's awesome.
Which is like awesome to me that this new young winger prospect who is one of their better prospects now is like, and I think probably tries to model some of his game, whether or not he's like a good comp for Kyrou. I think he probably tries to model some of his game after a guy like Kyrou. That's awesome to me, and so I hope he sticks around. And I'm already starting to fall in love with this Carbonneau kid. Um, but we'll be back to talk about Carbonneau and development camp, and also any other Blues news that happens between now and then. Hopefully with a special guest soon. So we'd really appreciate if everyone would come back and you know join the conversation again. We love having people on here live. Um, and we really appreciate all that. We're going to be doing something very interesting tomorrow ourselves as well. Um, I don't want to give too much away, but just
Stay tuned.
stay tuned for maybe maybe something new in Note News land.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, thanks to everyone for tuning in. It should be an eventful Tuesday tomorrow, and we'll be back here with any Blues news that happens, as I said. But we'll see y'all next time. And as always, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.